The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we are webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. It's Wednesday. I always get excited on Wednesday because we have two incredible segments on Wednesday. We start out with Ask Dr. Doreen. Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh will be joining us in just a moment to answer your questions. And then later today we have Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson will be here for that segment. So really a jam-packed day full of information for you. So let's get right to how you can interact with us. Emily's going to show you some different ways that you can be writing in, calling in, Skyping in. You can talk to us on Facebook, Twitter, all of those lovely different ways. But I want to remind you that the only way to watch us live and interact with us really easily is to use the live feature. You can go to www.autism-live.com. You'll see a desktop. On the desktop is a box. You put your cursor there and just start typing. You hit enter and it shows up magically right here on my screen, and I can forward your question in live time to Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh. And there's no cost. There is nothing to log into. Nobody's asking for your name or your credit card number. Isn't that fabulous? So I encourage you to participate in whatever way you can. You guys have already been writing in this morning on a lot of the different formats that we have, so I'm very excited. Without further ado, it's time for Ask Dr. Doreen.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is the
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism.
Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is a visionary in the field of autism, and now you get to ask her questions on Ask Dr. Doreen. Welcome to Ask Dr. Doreen. As I mentioned, our special guest for these segments is Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh.
Good morning.
Good morning. A true expert in the field of autism. You have so much experience, and we're always glad to be able to get some insights from you.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Well, and we want to remind everyone that you can write in with your questions right now, and some of you have already been doing that, but we do have to remind you that Dr. Granpeesheh will not be giving you child-specific information. That would be a disservice to your children. It's impossible in this format to get enough information to give child-specific information, but you are able to give us some really great general things to think about and progress with.
Yeah, we'll do our best, as long as people understand that we're not really able to give very specific, detailed information that might pertain or not pertain to their child.
Right, and I think we all get that. We always go to meetings and people talk in generalities, and we're the ones saying, please look at my child as an individual.
Right.
So we will totally respect that that's what you will do for us. We have a bunch of questions that have come in, and I want to start with one on social skills. Somebody has written in on our live feature and says, what exactly are social skills? When people say things like, you need to improve your social skills, or we're trying to get our kid into a social skills group, I always wonder what it is they actually mean. A great question.
Well, I mean, it is a great question, and I guess depending on how you look at it, you'll have a different answer for that. So just like any other set of skills, language skills, cognitive skills, you know, there's a series of things that we label under the heading of social skills, and they could be as basic as something like eye contact, or as advanced as being able to read other people's facial expressions and understand what they mean. So, or, you know, and what we do, you know, from the perspective of social skills being one of the deficits in autism, then really in that arena, all we're looking for is things like lack of eye contact, not knowing, not recognizing things like how close you should stand to someone or how you should interact with a group and those types of things, to then all the way, more advanced perspective of what social skills are. We're teaching very, very advanced things, differentiating between interactions that occur with one person versus a group, with people you know versus people who are new. I mean, so it's a huge array, and I think the best we've done in terms of defining it is on our skills domains. If you go on our skills website and you look into the social skills domain area, you'll see a breakdown of the different areas of social skills that we actually try to teach. Yeah. Now, having said that, like anything else, there's always a range. Like a person could potentially have the ability to do a variety of social behaviors, but choose not to because they're just someone who, prefers alone time to being with others. So there's a variation, but it's just a matter of being capable of those skills, I suppose.
Absolutely, and it seems like to me, coming into the field of autism as a parent,
right.
I was completely unexposed, and I would have been somebody asking this question, saying, what exactly does this mean? And over the years, it's been fascinating to me to see all the different aspects to it,
right.
and to realize that in this spectrum of autism spectrum disorder, but in the spectrum of life, people have different skill sets. Absolutely. In this area.
Oh.
And as I read through the social skills area of the skills program, I remember being really interested in seeing the things where I have a deficit. Like, I don't know how to end a conversation. It's something I'm working on, but I don't know how to end a conversation, and that's one of the lessons that's in there.
Sure.
And I looked at, and my husband will forgive me for saying this, that he has a harder time joining a conversation and being heard.
Right.
And I saw all the different aspects of that lesson of joining a conversation and shared some of it with him and said, I think you have all of these, but you're missing 2 and 12. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And to think that we're adults that are neurotypical, whatever that means, and imagining for our kids, taking all of these little variables, all the different opportunities that they have to succeed, which also means there's opportunities to have missed something.
Absolutely. And that, I think, is really critical because social skills, even within the same area of social skills, they change as we age.
Yes.
Right? So whereas it would be appropriate for a child to, let's say, engage in conversation with a group of other children in one way, like get people's attention, it's not appropriate anymore if you're 45 years old. You know? So the concepts are there, but they change as we age, which really goes to the point that we're not trying to teach every single thing. We're trying to teach our kids to observe and be able to continue to learn. My mentor, Professor Lovas, always used to say, there's a point where you're successful in the intervention because you've taught the child how to learn.
Yes.
And that's really all it is, because the child continues to learn then from their environment.
Yeah.
And the other thing about social skills is that I think if you were to summarize it in a nutshell, it is hugely dependent on the ability to read other people's minds, or the ability to put yourself in their place, let's put it that way. And just even within the typically developing population, let's say just with all the people we work with in this building, for instance, Shannon, you'll find people who are incredible in terms of intuition or being able to figure out what someone's either trying to say, or just be cautious of other people, or be aware of other people, see things from their perspective.
Yes.
And then there are people who are pretty oblivious to that, right?
Right.
And that's also why possibly they say that women have better social skills. And that's probably because women have a stronger sense of intuition about others. So, social skills, I think the biggest factor that leads to positive social skills or strength in social skills is the theory of mind ability, perspective-taking ability. That really, really helps. So often with my own children, or I tell my friends who have children as well, teach empathy empathy. Teach the child how to take other people's perspectives, because that will really flow into a lot of other sub-skills.
Yes. It's an amazing area.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's so much work that can be done with our kids. And I've seen my son make improvement, but I do see what you're saying about that it changes with time.
Yeah.
And the skill set changes with time.
Exactly.
It's fascinating. Fascinating area, but really appreciate the question. We have a bunch of questions that have come in about sleep, and then an interesting comment that came in from an individual who's on the spectrum. But I want to start with a question about sleep. And I'm just finding it here on Facebook now that I've lost it. Okay, because we've talked about this a little bit before, but again, parents are writing in about it. This question is, my 3-year-old won't sleep through the night. We are now at 5 milligrams of melatonin and 2 teaspoons of Benadryl a night. I'm losing my mind from lack of sleep. Help. And another parent very graciously wrote in and said that their son is 8 and that they have the same sleep issues going on, but that they're trying dietary things, for instance, bananas, apples, grapes, that have a lot of phenols, and then doing Epsom salt baths. And that has helped that individual child. I think it's important to note that in some children, doing the phenols could possibly have the exact opposite effect.
Well, I have enough experience in dietary change and how it would influence sleep in a positive way. I will say that in general for our kid, and I'm really glad it's working for this family, but you have to, in general, I think we have to be very careful with phenols with our kids, because phenols overburden the detox system. And if you are eating things with high phenolic content like bananas or chocolate or any of those, it takes a lot of work to detoxify from those. And then when you're exposed to other toxins, you can't detoxify everything. So it's just that simple. But of course, there are dietary restrictions that do help sleep, for sure. So, you know, nothing that's stimulating. And for our kids, that could be a variety of different things. And sugars, of course, very obvious one. But, you know, there are some diets that say red food coloring. There are certain things that are just have a stimulating effect on our kids. And I'm sure you can find literature on that, because this type of thing is pretty common. For the other family who was talking about giving their child 2 spoons of Benadryl and as well as 5 milligrams of melatonin, I hear you. I mean, it is so difficult sometimes to just get the right stuff for our kids. Melatonin is good for our kids, and again, I can't tell you the correct dosage of melatonin because it really has to do with your child's body weight. But you know, an adult can easily take 6 milligrams of an adult being like over 100 pounds, you can basically take 6 milligrams of melatonin, and it's healthy for you. It's good for you because melatonin interacts and help you produce serotonin, and it's something beneficial. But melatonin on its own, I found, has this cycle where perhaps it'll put you to sleep, perhaps, and then it'll wake you up like 3-4 hours later or 5-6 hours later, and that's not necessarily something you want. If I take melatonin, if my children take melatonin, it doesn't really work. What does work is this other chewable tablet called, I think it's Tranquil Sleep, and it is melatonin as well as tryptophan, 5-HTP, and that is really effective. The other thing about melatonin is I found that if you, and a lot of people tell me this as well, if you take melatonin more than 3 nights in a row, it really won't work anymore. So you kind of need to have periods of break. So you'll have 3 nights, perhaps, then the 4th night you don't take it, then 3 nights, that sort of thing. You know, that is the only thing I can really suggest. If you try this, the combination of tryptophan and melatonin, and it still isn't working for your child, you probably should go to a sleep disorders clinic, just because you don't want to continue to give your child Benadryl forever. I mean, any medication that you're using to that extent for a purpose other than what it's intended to be isn't going to be good. It also is going to require some detoxification, but also your child will habituate to it, and you know, and maybe if your child's doing well on Benadryl, there's other issues. For instance, the child needs anti-inflammatories. You should really consult with a specialist.
Okay.
And I can't say this enough. Like, sleep is so critical to our kids. And sometimes we forget environmental factors as well. Our kids, keep in mind, a lot of our kids have very sensitive hearing. So, you know, spend the night, if you haven't already, in your child's room is perhaps, let's say, the sprinkler going on in the middle of the night that would wake your child. It's things that perhaps wouldn't wake you, but there's something going on in the environment. Is it dark enough? Is it? So there's all these other environmental things. And then, of course, make sure that you keep your child on a routine.
Yeah.
Perhaps the child is napping a lot. Sometimes I find that our kids sleep a lot better once they've reached the age where we can get rid of their naps during the day. And things improve pretty significantly then. You know, make sure that your child doesn't have other GI issues, which will definitely keep the child up at night. Sometimes our kids do have some sort of pain and they can't express it. So, you know, those are some ideas if you haven't already thought about them. And if you have, I think it's just important to check into, have a sleep EEG done, figure out why your child, when and why your child's waking up. If your child isn't going through a full cycle of sleep and isn't getting about 5 to 6 hours at least of straight sleep, then they're not producing enough neurotransmitters, and so that's going to start messing with the biochemistry completely.
Okay, I have a question for you. When you go to the sleep clinic and do the EEG, will that recognize if the child is having tiny, small seizures? Because I keep hearing all these parents discovering years later that their child is having these small seizures. So
subclinical, Okay. Seizures that you won't even see in behavior, but EEG is the best way to determine those.
Okay, fabulous. Great advice. And then we did have a 26-year-old who is on the spectrum who wrote in and said to us, I saw your segment on sleep issues and thought you might appreciate some insight from the horse's mouth.
Great.
Which we always appreciate. They go on to say, I'm a 26-year-old autistic adult who has spent my entire life fighting insomnia. Although I can't speak for everyone, but in my case at least, I think some people, autistic or not, are just predisposed to be nocturnal. Forcing me to stay in bed didn't help because I could just lay there awake for hours. No matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't drift off to sleep at night. I always found it easier to fall asleep during the day and got more fulfilling quality of sleep if I slept in the day. I've been fighting this fight for 26 years and it's a losing battle. Like I said, maybe some people are just predisposed to being nocturnal. I don't know if you will find this helpful or not. I just thought you'd like some insight. And I always love to hear from individuals on the spectrum because you know, I'm trying to take my child's perspective, and sometimes getting your perspective helps me to do that.
Absolutely. And first of all, may I say how well spoken that individual is. The way they've written it, it's so nice.
And the thing about this may not be true of everyone.
Absolutely.
Love that, because clearly you're taking perspective. Beautiful writing.
No question. Yeah, very beautiful writing. So I don't know. You know, I would say if this individual has tried to sleep without sleeping during the day, then you're right. You probably are more suited to sleep during the day. But the thing is that if you are sleeping during the day, you're never going to know really if you're able to sleep at night, because then you're just not as tired.
Yeah.
Having said that, I think that anything that helps you remain functional, I mean, if you are sleeping better during the day and you can work that into your life schedule, in other words, your family members are fine with it and you have a job that is maybe a night job or something that allows you to work you know, later in the day or so, then great. Why not? It doesn't really matter, as long as you can function within the world. A lot of people actually live that way, obviously, because they have night jobs.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's fine. But I mean, it's just important to know if it's bothering you, then it would be worth changing it or trying to change it. Some people, Shannon, like to sleep during the day because it feels safer. There's a lot of noise around, or there's other people in the house that makes them feel safer. There's all these other reasons that could potentially interact with it. But yeah, I mean, I don't see anything wrong with it as long as it maintains your functionality.
Right. But for those of us who have have kids that are school-aged, we don't have that option.
Very difficult. That's right. You don't. I mean, well, you do in some ways. Like I look at my nanny, you know, and she could potentially, after she drops the kids off at school or helps me drop one of the kids off at school, she could potentially sleep from 8 till, I guess, 3.
Yeah. But I mean, for our kids who won't stay asleep, to put them to bed, they have to be on day hours to go to school until the time when they have elementary school at night.
That's right.
Which I'm not seeing happening with the current economic situation.
I don't think so. No.
But yeah, so for at least a period of time, we have to try to regulate them to the point where they're going to wake up in the morning and be able to go to school and be productive.
That's right.
It might be a losing battle in some cases, but we have to keep fighting the good fight.
Absolutely. And always remember that changing your state is difficult. In other words, going from awake to asleep and asleep to awake is difficult. Those are two transitions everybody tries to avoid most of the time, or most majority of people. So it's always hard to fall asleep, and it's always hard to wake up. So because of those two things, you know, behavioral terms again, we avoid those things, which is why we often like to end up sleeping later or waking up later, you know, and we go into this cycle of being tired all the time. And I was just reading something about when you miss sleep, how long it takes to actually recover that. You know, making up for your lost sleep is pretty intense. But as I said, with anything else, it just matters. The only thing that matters is your functionality. It's like if you are able to function and that's your schedule, then great. Why not?
I think I'm still catching up on sleep I missed in the first 2 years of my son's life. I think it's going to take me 20 years. I need to read the article that you read to find out that when I'm 80, I'll be caught up.
Maybe.
Maybe. Okay, somebody else wrote in and said, I've left comments before. We had my 6-year-old son's IEP. He's behind. So I asked if we could get a tutor or do Kumon, I hope I'm saying that right, which helps with reading and a lot of academics. But his SSD teachers told me that wasn't a good idea and that he could shut down. What do you think?
I don't think he's going to shut down. It really depends on how delayed he is. So I say yes, definitely get a tutor. I mean, there's no question about that, because it really depends on the style of the tutor. I mean, a lot of times what, you know, ABA therapists are doing is similar to tutoring, except they're tutoring not just in academics, but in many other areas as well. Kumon, we've had a lot of kids benefit from Kumon. Your child should be pretty high functioning if you're considering something like Kumon, because it is a lot of, they'll give you exercises and then there's a lot of independent work. There's many others of these as well. I think in California we have Huntington or learning centers. And yeah, they're for after school tutoring for kids, and they're pretty effective actually. So yeah, that's one thing you could do. And another thing is just figure out the specific areas and get a tutor and have them work on those specific things. And here we're assuming that it's just academic stuff, but if it's beyond academic stuff, then you would probably be a parent who would benefit from our skills work, because if you go on our skills website, then you'll see a lot of just detail of, first of all, you'll identify everything your child is falling behind on, every possible skill, and then you'll see lessons on how to teach them, and then we also have training on our IBT website, so anyone can join the skills program, get the training on how to do it, and then follow the program. 6-year-old, that's perfect, right in the middle of skills.
And I'm just concerned about this, that the SSD teacher thinks that they could potentially shut down, but correct me if I'm oversimplifying this, if they make it reinforcing enough and give the child breaks, that shouldn't happen.
Yeah, why would the child shut down? I mean, any negative experience will make the child shut down, but why would tutoring be negative?
Right, you got to make it exciting
you just
enough
have to,
and
it's positive. Enough. I mean, these places like Kumon and Huntington wouldn't be that successful if if kids weren't getting through them.
Right.
You know, so I don't think that they're aversive. Yeah. I think they involve some work, but hey, our kids through our programs go through 40 hours of work, so as long as it's rewarding and fair.
Yeah.
There's the word again, fair.
Yeah, which I so appreciate. We talked about the word fair last week, and we've continued talking about it and all the things.
Always.
And it strikes me, we had a viewer write in months ago and talked about how they were signing their child up to take Chinese. Mm-hmm. And their mother or mother-in-law, somebody was voicing concern and saying, the child needs to work on their English language skills, and he's behind in terms of this. Why would you put that on him? It's going to be too much. And the mother was saying, but the child wants to.
One of my kids did that as well. Mm-hmm. So one of the guys on our recovered DVD, mm-hmm. one of our kids, he learned Chinese and he excelled at it. And I just have to give a shout out to him, because his mom just emailed me a few days ago and said that he got into the PhD program at Georgia Tech for robotics.
Oh, okay. I want to talk to him, because I got a kid who's interested in that too. That's amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah.
But and we had said to this mom, it's important to give your children the things that they're excited about.
Oh, absolutely.
She started the class and has written back and said that he's doing so well in the Chinese and that it's helped with other things as well. I think sometimes people discount our kids.
Or sometimes we still, in some way or another, try to fit them into a mold.
Yes.
Right? It's like, yes, it's possibly not, right now it may not be the most useful second language, but with the way technology is developing and with the influence of the Far East in technology, this could actually be something extremely valuable in the future. And who cares? This
is child's passion. Yeah,
your child loves it. It's like art, right? Yeah. Like, really, how functional is art in our futures? Mm-hmm. It's not. It's a hobby, and it will make him feel good about himself, just like anything else that we spend time doing.
Yeah, I agree. So interesting. Okay. Here's a great question. I have a 6-year-old with autism. We have been working, and he has progressed beautifully over the last 2 years. Much to my surprise, my 16-year-old has asked to be tested, and they believe he has Asperger's. And then they write, "How did we miss this? Can you give advice to other parents that may be going through this? I was completely caught off guard with this. Unlike my youngest son, I knew there was an issue. Advice." And we have been hearing from a lot of parents who are having this happen, getting an Asperger diagnosis for a teenager, and when there is the evidence of other people in the family, they feel educated about autism, but they missed it.
I guess the first thing I would say is just, first of all, make sure that it's an accurate diagnosis. I'd probably get another opinion or just have some standardized testing for it. There are some tests that are specifically for Asperger's. Secondly, don't put too much weight into it. I think it's important to know if your child has enough of the symptoms to qualify for Asperger's. But on the other hand, if you know that, great. In fact, if you decide to get services, you'll have some insurance coverage for this now. But what it means is nothing. It doesn't really mean anything other than, it's like saying my child has anxiety. And how do you miss it? This is how you miss it. Just imagine if your child has a horrible rash all over his body, and it is scary, and you're going to look at that thing, and it's a sudden drastic change from what he was before. Okay, well, you're going to take him to the doctor and find out what this is and treat it.
Right.
Okay. Your other child has a very small rash on just one part of his body, or maybe here, and it doesn't really seem to bother him all that much, at least not for many years, and it's always been there, you know, and it's benign. And that's how you miss it.
Yeah.
Because there's something causing that smaller rash too, but it doesn't seem to be disturbing him, or nobody else really sees it or recognizes it as a major problem. So it's not a problem.
Yeah.
Now, this takes us back to the definition of a disorder. And I always say this, and this is really important. Our field, Shannon, of autism has been more or less taken over by, I guess, because of the expertise of behavior analysts in treating it, BCBAs. It's been kind of taken over by the field of behavior analysis in that sense. But before being a behavior analyst, I was a psychologist. And you have to remember that nothing is a disorder unless it takes away from your ability during your work or school life and your family. In other words, if you are still, and this is the same, we just talked about this, if you're functional, if you're adaptive, if you're able to function fine, then the disorder is not a disorder. All the symptoms could exist, but it isn't really taking anything away from your life. Now, with Asperger's, to be very honest with you, having been in the field for that long, you know, over 30 years, you see sort of the spectrum. This is the spectrum of autism, you know, and yes, on one end we have the kids that are just extremely severely affected by autism, no communication ability, maybe self-injurious even, like real severe, need a massive amount of support and help. And then on the other end, you have our kids who are either PDD, where they're very mild symptoms, or they're Asperger's, where really their language is pretty advanced, but they have just sort of they're uncomfortable socially and all this sort of stuff. And to be honest with you, when you look at very high-functioning adolescents or teenagers who say, hey, maybe I have Asperger's as well, they could just as well have anxiety. I mean, a lot of the symptoms are the same. They're social anxiety type kids. They're kids that don't know how to interact in society, they feel more comfortable alone than they do with others. They feel their interests are quite different from others. Other than that, they're pretty smart. In fact, generally extremely smart. And you know, as we all know, some very famous people in history and in current time have been said to have Asperger's, and they are geniuses, right? And again, it goes back to, hey, are they functional? Yeah, they're functional. Not only are they functional, they're changing our world. Right?
They're uber functional.
They're leaders in areas that we're not as good in. So it just keeps going back to that. The only reason that I would be concerned if you first of all, you stop, you know, there's no blame here.
Right.
Like there sounds like the parent is saying, how could I have missed this? You know what?
Forgive yourself.
Yeah, forget it completely.
Yeah.
There's no way you would have picked up on it because your child was doing fine.
Yeah.
And hey, when I say fine, a lot of kids are, you know, I have 3 kids right now. 2 of them are crying if they don't get 100%, and the other one's happy if he's skipping D's, you know? So what I'm saying is there's a huge variation in our kids, right? So your child, as they were growing up, might have not been absolutely excellent in every area, but I'm sure there was enough of his overall functioning that made you feel he's fine.
Yeah.
And that's that. It's that simple. The only reason to be concerned about it now is if it is somehow impacting his life now. So, and typically with my Asperger's kids, what I'm looking at is depression, anxiety are the key things to be aware of. Like, if your child, and I have a feeling there might be something there because, like, why is your child saying, I need to get checked as well? It could be either he finds things difficult and can't explain to himself why. He can't understand why certain things are just so hard for him and that bothers him. And over time, that'll depress him. And particular environments will make him anxious. Or it could be he's just feeling left out because your other child's getting a lot of attention and he is wondering, hey, can I have something wrong with me too, because I need attention as well. So pay attention to all of those factors, and labels don't really mean anything other than to open the doors to some interventions and funding. If your child really does have certain symptoms, they are absolutely treatable. In fact, if he's that high functioning and he's a teenager, he can work on treating them a lot himself. And I would recommend that you read and see if they apply to him. I guess a lot of books on theory of mind. I think they're called, you will find the subjects under mind blindness. A lot of that, Tony Atwood has a lot of work for Asperger's that you can talk about. Like, he has a toolbox that he gives you and you put all your strengths in there and then you use them when you need them. It's sort of just taking general concepts and making them more visual for the individual to use. But I would not worry, and I think that your child probably has a lot of different ways to gain help.
Great advice. We're going to take a short break and come back with more questions. Keep them coming, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. We'll be back more with Dr. Doreen Grant-Pichet after these messages.
Every child with autism deserves a bright future.
Without further clarification, the Affordable Care Act could actually result in less benefits for individuals with autism spectrum disorders.
We urge Catherine Sebelius to clarify the Affordable Health Care Act.
She can make one change, one little minor change, to make applied behavioral analysis be part of the health care plan.
By signing this petition, you are protecting the healthcare benefits of individuals with autism spectrum disorders.
We need to make sure
that we are heard
and seen.
Sign a petition at autism-live.com.
Here's how you can show your infinite support. Create your own infinity ribbon. What you're going to do is take a ribbon that's been cut about 8 inches long, and you're going to grab one end and then twist it, and then take the two ends and join them together, and then tape it together. And then I'm going to flip it around and take another piece of tape, and what I have is double-sided sticky tape. Squeeze down. You have your very own infinity ribbon.
With ABA,
the possibilities are infinite.
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 With ABA,
the possibilities are infinite. With ABA,
The possibilities are infinite. Welcome back to Ask Dr. Doreen. We were talking earlier, and I mentioned the mom who had written it about her son taking Chinese, and she's watching. And so she wrote and said, I'm the mom of the son taking the Chinese class. He's doing great with it. About 24 peers take the class with him after school. He is on an equal playing field with the peers for the first time because he doesn't know any more Chinese than they do. It's totally fair. There's the word we've been talking about.
Yeah.
No delays. They are all learning the language together. He loves the iPad apps that I found for him to learn Chinese vocabulary too.
So good.
And it's a good thing that my mom actually sees now. So she did. The mom is on board. The grandmom's on board now. Thanks for all the support in this, Shannon and Dr. Doreen. Great. We love to get updates from you guys about how things are going.
That's
we all
nice.
learn from it.
Absolutely.
That's great. Now, we have another question that has come in on the live feature. Somebody wants to know, how do we deal with aggression in teenagers, especially when going out with the family? That's pretty open-ended.
That's fine. I like to keep it open-ended because whatever advice we give might actually help any teenager.
Okay.
Not just teenagers on the spectrum, but any teenager. So again, aggression is, you start with a definition of aggression, and you have to start with what's causing the aggression, and like anything else that's a non-adaptive, maladaptive behavior, I guess, we'd have to say that it is a form of speech, or it's a form of communication.
Okay.
And so then the question becomes, what is the individual trying to communicate by aggressing? And this then takes us back to the very basic question that we ask in ABA. There's every single thing we do in life is either to gain something or avoid something. So what is he trying to gain or avoid? So when you go out, what is he trying to gain? Maybe he gets your attention more, I don't know. Perhaps if it's only happening when you go out, maybe he's trying to avoid going out, right? So he doesn't like going out, and there could be a million different reasons for that. If he's more severely impacted with autism, then I would say maybe it's the stimulation in the environment. Sometimes our kids are really disturbed by the noises, the sounds in the environment. Get him Bose headphones. Sometimes it could be just the visual stimulation. You could use tinted glasses, sunglasses, anything that's gonna, and you can shape this up too. Sometimes it's just he doesn't want to be confined to a table for that period of time, in which case he needs breaks. Find out what the cause is. What is he trying to communicate? Without knowing that, you're not going to be able to intervene. And that's why in ABA we always do what's called a functional behavior assessment. assessment. And a functional behavior assessment is that you just, you produce different situations so that you can actually figure out exactly what is causing this behavior, what is the function of the behavior. And like I said, it's going to be some variation of I want to avoid something or I want to gain access to something. Once you've determined that, so what you do is you will teach your child how to request that thing in a more appropriate way. So let's assume the scenario is your child aggresses when you go to restaurants, okay? And you have now determined that the function is it's too loud. Okay, so all you have to do is you have to teach your child, whether it's nonverbal communication through an icon or if it's verbal, where you train the child to request, can I have headphones before you go out? And the first time you try this is obviously you're shaping the behavior. So you would give your child headphones, you go to the restaurant and it's loud, but you only stay for 3 minutes, and he experiences it in a positive way, gets rewarded, and he gets to go back home. Okay, that's one scenario, and there could be 20 different scenarios. But the main concept behind it is you've taught him a functional request, a request that's very adaptive and functional to replace the tantrum or the aggression, and you do not allow the aggression to reach its function. So in other words, if he really aggresses, and every time he aggresses you remove him and take him home, you don't do that anymore. Because if you keep doing that, it gives him the message that it's effective to aggress. See, so I'll try to water this down because this is a pretty complicated concept that I'm trying to explain in 2 minutes. So let's say I hit you, Shannon, and the reason I'm hitting you is because I want something of yours. I want that ribbon, okay? And you're not giving it to me. So what you would do as a behavior analyst is, first of all, you'd make sure that my hitting behavior is useless. So no matter how much I hit you, you're not going to give me that ribbon. You're not going to let me have that ribbon. And the second thing you do is you make sure that I have some other functional adaptive way of actually saying, could I have that ribbon? Right. And then you would give me the ribbon. So essentially over time you're teaching me that vocally expressing myself or expressing myself through an icon or some adaptive way of expressing myself does work, but the aggression format doesn't work. And those two things have to go together. So it all has to do with figuring out why he's aggressing. And in a lot of cases, it's environmental stimuli, like noises, sounds, lights, whatever. Sometimes it's just wanting to continue doing what he's doing at home. Hey, I mean, a lot of teenagers don't want to do anything other than sit in front of their computer now. Right. And that brings in the other concept of shaping. And I gave a very small example of shaping. But shaping is essentially reinforcing or rewarding very small steps towards your end goal. So if your end goal is being able to take your adolescent child out, then the first time you do it, you only literally go out for 2 minutes, and you then go back home and reward. The next time you do it for 3 minutes, the next time for 5, the next time for 10, and you only do it gradually so that it's always a positive experience. If you go up too fast and suddenly jump to 15 minutes and your child starts to have a hard time with it, then you go back and you stay at the 10-minute mark where he was successful. And then you try again. And you increase it again gradually. And these are all techniques that your behavior analyst, if you have a behavior analyst, should be able to help you with. Now, it's harder when your child is a teenager and they're big and they're aggressive, because this has not only been ingrained in them, so it's a very long-term habit, but also because it's harder for you to not give in, right? Because teenagers can be kind of scary if they're aggressive. Which is why you often will need, behavior analysts, our staff, for instance, we get trained in techniques that allow us to defend ourselves and also to hold the individual in a way that they can't harm themselves or others. Right. And those types of techniques are pretty important. So I wouldn't really suggest that sometimes I see moms and they're like tiny, 5 feet tall, 100 pounds, and then their teenage son is like double the size.
Yeah.
I would not suggest that you try to gain control over it. You will need assistance from someone who can actually hold your son in a way that he realizes he's not going to be able to successfully aggress and get his way anymore.
Yeah.
And then replace it with something more functional.
And I have to say, sitting and listening to this too, I'm reminded as a parent of two things that happened to me and how important it is to get help anyway.
Oh,
even if it's not just the physical, that I think as a parent, especially when we're stressed and overwhelmed and possibly underslept, we lose our ability to check and see what we're capable of.
Absolutely.
And honestly,
we get emotionally involved in it, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's embarrassing when our children are aggressing in public. It's scary if they're that big.
Yeah.
It's just we're very emotionally involved with it, and that is just horrible.
And we never have the ability to see something from a 360-degree perspective when we're in it.
Sure.
That's just unreasonable.
Or when it's your child.
Or when it's your child. And so really important that you get some help and support to get through those things. It's so easy. I am not an expert. I'm not a behaviorist. And I watched last summer, we took our son to see Mystere. Mm-hmm. And people pay a lot of money to go and see that. And previously we've had a hard time sometimes when he was little, but now we've shaped up that he will sit in a theater seat and enjoy something like that. But there was a teenager that I have no idea what the diagnosis was, but they weren't capable of speech, but they were capable of sound. Mm-hmm. And she was there with her parents and making a lot of noise before the show. And they were talking to her and trying to calm her, but then she started to hit them.
Yeah.
And I felt so bad for them.
Right.
And they were, and she kept trying. She had a special chair that she was in, and she kept trying to get out the chair, and they kept trying to get her back in the chair. And she was making urgent noises, and they kept trying to get her back in the chair, and then she started to hit them, at which point they gave up and let her get out of the chair. And it was amazing to see the difference in this young woman as soon as she got out of the chair, and she literally ran out of the theater. They had to follow her, and I believe she ran to the restroom. Mm-hmm. And of course, watching it was one of those things, I felt so bad for them.
Yeah.
But it was easier to see on the outside when I wasn't experiencing it emotionally how clear it was that she was communicating something. I didn't know what.
Yeah, I wanted to get out of here.
Yes, I need to get out of here. I have something urgent that I need to do outside. And how beneficial it was for me as a parent when I was in those moments with my admittedly much smaller child to have someone be able to say to me, "Do you see he's communicating with you?" Mm-hmm. And in that moment go, "Oh my gosh, how did I miss that?" Because of all the things that I was going through.
I think that's probably one of the biggest things I learned in the application of behavioral intervention. I think Johnson actually was the person that sort of just said it to me at one point in those simple terms. It was like, well, it's just communication.
Yeah.
And when you look at it as just communication, any kind of aggressive behavior or even any kind of challenging behavior, really, you realize, oh my gosh, that it is communication, and we don't pay enough attention to what the individual is trying to say.
It's so freeing when you have that moment when you realize that it's communication, because really it's the thing we all want.
Absolutely.
We want to be able to communicate with our child.
This is true, but also I think we think of these behaviors as so bad, which of course they're not social behaviors. They're not socially appropriate to aggress or scream or tantrum or hit or whatever it is. But the point is, when we see those behaviors, I think the first thing that goes on with us is this whole embarrassment of like, oh my God, now everybody's going to think that I'm a bad parent or whatever. And really, I have to say, one of the things I love about Taka has these cards that you can hand out, and it's almost like saying, when you give out the card, to be blunt about it, it's almost like saying, don't judge me, you have no idea. You really have no idea, don't make any judgments. And the truth is, who cares? I mean, we do care that we don't want to disturb other people in a theater, for instance, or that sort of thing, but we have to remember that our kids are trying to communicate something and they're not always able to do it appropriately. And it's not a bad behavior. I mean, there's this whole thing about, is my child behaving badly?
Yeah.
You know, and it's not. That's not what's happening. There's no bad in our kids. There isn't any bad, and it's not like they intentionally want to hurt someone. They don't. They're just defending themselves, you know?
And if we get into that headspace, then we have the ability to change it and help them to communicate effectively, which is an amazing thing.
And our kids are confused. That's what's really important, and I see that the most with our teenagers, because as they get bigger, and if intervention hasn't happened correctly and they're now a teenager who's aggressing, that means for at least 10 years, maybe 15 years, this modality has worked for me.
Right.
This has worked. Maybe not. Maybe you haven't been happy about it.
Right.
But what's more important is I've gotten my needs met.
Yeah.
And maybe you're not the one giving in, but everyone else in my environment has. Right. Whatever it is, like, I know when you will give in because we're in public, or I know whenever you'll give in because you're driving, whatever it is.
Right.
And the thing is, it's confusing for our kids when you try to tell them, hey, it's not going to work anymore.
Yes.
So be very aware of the fact that the minute you change and start intervening correctly, you'll have what's called an extinction burst. So the child's behavior will get worse before it gets better, because from the child's perspective, they're saying, wait a minute, this worked up till now. How come you're not letting me have my way even though I'm screaming? Okay, maybe I should scream louder.
Right.
So they'll scream louder, hit harder, do more, have a longer tantrum. But if you stay with it and not give in, then it does extinguish.
Absolutely. And the one other thing that I wanted to add, when you were talking about the shaping the behavior, and when you go out to the restaurant and only stay for 2 minutes, or you go to the store and only stay for 3 minutes and then come back and stay 4 minutes, that I remember that being explained to me by the wonderful Art Wilkie when my child was hitting me in the grocery store and saying, you know, you're going to go in for this long and you're going to leave, and me saying to him in my underslept state, but Art, I have to do grocery shopping.
Yeah.
I can't do that in 2 minutes. And he said to me very patiently, you're going to do that at a different time.
Yeah.
You're not going to the store when you're shaping behavior to get your needs met. You're going there to teach your child. And I went, oh. Honestly, he needed to say it to me.
No, absolutely.
And I don't consider myself an unintelligent person, but he needed to say it to me.
Which is exactly why, Shannon, a lot of times I say, yes, I agree that parents need to be trained and involved, but the truth is, parents have to make sure the entire family is still functional and running, and there's other kids, and a lot of times we can't necessarily be doing all the interventions ourselves, because we have to take care of everything else.
We need support and services, and we're all fighting for everybody to have those. We had another question come in on Facebook. Somebody wrote in and said, I'm 42 and believe I have autism. It is against the law in the UK to hold this from me. They also lost all of my medical records from birth till I was 6. Do I have the right to know what is the matter with me?
Yeah, of course.
42 years old, I would think absolutely.
Absolutely, and regardless of how old you are, you can still see a specialist, and they can help to diagnose you, and they can help also identify what areas you need help in, and you can help them identify that clearly, and yeah, you have every right to know.
Absolutely. So you can take some charge of that for yourself.
It's harder in the UK. You know, in the UK there's a lot of other stuff going on politically, and it's hard to get the right services. But, you know, I'm sure there are pediatricians who are able to diagnose and help.
Absolutely. We had another question come in on the live feature. Do you find that a lot of your kids eat only a handful of things? Our 6-year-old son only eats Lay's, not any other brand, sour cream chips, Gerber, not any other brand of fruit snacks, and a few cereals. Only rice milk and apple juice. Have worked a bit with the feeding team at Children's Hospital in Wisconsin, so just wondering what your experience has been with this area of spectrum/sensory issues. As always, thank you.
So yes, and I'm so glad this person's question came in right after the previous one, because, you know, we have a whole series of services that we call SOS services, and that stands for Specialized Outpatient Services, and the aggressive sort of behaviors fall under that too. So in other words, if we can help you, please feel free to contact us. We do have supervisors who will just deal with aggressive behavior and just deal with that sort of thing. Pretty much regardless of where you are, we can help you. So because as you said, Art Wilkie, one of our best behaviorists, could also travel and come to you and help you with that. Now, in regards to feeding, I've had kids here who have started with G-tubes, you know, so they're not eating anything. And my philosophy and we do get them to the point where they're eating a very healthy diet. We have a lot of programming and we have feeding clinics, so we focus very much on feeding, and it's a shaping procedure. So we take all the foods that the child likes and they become rewards. And those are now given to the child contingent on small chunks of other types of foods, and then you gradually increase the foods that were not previously taken, and you decrease the reinforcers, so there's a balanced level. It's not a very long or difficult procedure. It works. It's always successful if it's done right. Yes, there's a huge sensory component to it. A lot of children, if a child has that need for certain items to be perfect or of a certain brand, then it's either an obsessive compulsive portion of the child's problems. In other words, he's just being, I used to have a child who would only eat perfectly shaped Cheerios, not if they were broken, but perfect. And that was very much OCD, obsessive compulsive stuff, which again is anxiety. Other kids will only eat certain brands because they've generalized in that way. I think my philosophy of food withdrawal or restriction is that our kids will eat something, it will make them feel bad, and then they'll generalize that, overgeneralize that to other types of foods in some category. For instance, as an adult, you might eat, let's say, beans and not feel very good, and then you will say, okay, it makes sense that I shouldn't eat other types of legumes, you know, like garbanzos and black beans as well, and other beans. You'll stay in the same food category because, you know, there's something in there. But with kids, they don't know that, so they'll generalize according to things like color. I'm not going to eat anything that's the same color, or anything that's the same texture. I will only eat crunchy foods because last time I had something that wasn't crunchy, it made me feel really bad. And it's not like they're reasoning that. This is just very subconscious conditioning. It's your body reacting to things of the same nature. So yeah, all of that can be reversed and expanded upon. Feeding is not a huge issue as long as your child's swallowing, which they are, and we will teach them chewing, we will teach them everything else, and we will expand their food. So a lot of behaviorists can do feeding programs. There's a whole subspecialty of feeding within ABA, and so you should absolutely be able to get that help. And again, we'd be happy to help as well.
Okay, great. We're getting so many questions coming in and so many things that we had a follow-up on a couple of the questions that you've said, so I'm going to focus on those. Thanks so much, Dr. Doreen. This is in reference to my question about aggression with her 15-year-old.
Yes.
It's triggered by kids crying. There are kids crying everywhere and hard to avoid. He's bigger than me and now even stronger than my husband. Safety comes first. We're avoiding outdoors with the family unless this situation is resolved. Our two other kids get tense because of this situation, and family time together is missing. We will be getting private ABA soon, which is fabulous news. They want to know if there's any tips that you would like to add. It's a desperate situation, and thank you so much.
Sure, it's my pleasure, and this is actually a pretty easy one. So what you do is a sort of desensitization schedule. It's fabulous that you've identified that it's triggered by kids crying. I don't know if it's triggered by the sound of kids crying or by seeing kids crying. Either way, what you do, let's assume it's by sound of kids crying. So what you would do is you literally will produce stimuli at home that make that effect. So let's say you'll get a bunch of videotapes of kids crying, you'll get audio tapes of kids crying, and again, you will teach your child at home to take a set of Bose headphones and put them on when that stimulus begins. And they will then be able to avoid the sound that's bothering them. Try that, because it might be the sound and the visual might not necessarily affect them. Some kids get very upset when they see other children crying because the empathy, they have so much sadness for the child. If that's the case, then you generally just will be able to habituate your child, and you'll play the video. And this is again desensitization, so you can even start with just a picture with an audio in the background or just audio, and then you will eventually go to a video and you expose your child, teach them to put the headphones on, and then you will take them out and again have the headphones available for your child so that anytime they see that, they can try them on.
Okay.
Try this and let me know how it works.
Okay, so right back to us. And then another follow-up after the food question, somebody wants to know, hi, Dr. Doreen, do you have supervisors or specialists who work on sensory issues? Because we talked about the food issues.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we do. I mean, sensory is such a big part of our program. I'm a big, big believer that our kids have sensory problems across the board, very dysregulated and sensitivities. So it's a part of our program. They're not going to come and just work on sensory issues. They will incorporate sensory issues into their intervention so that over time the sensory issues will dissipate. And during intervention, we accommodate, let's put it that way. We will make sure that things are presented in a sensory-friendly way to each child.
Okay. And if somebody has a specific sensory issue, though, could they go through SOS for that?
They certainly can. I mean, feeding is not necessarily a sensory issue. It's more of a learned behavior. It starts with a biological issue and it becomes a learned behavior. It could start with a sensory issue, but it becomes a learned behavior because it expands, it spreads. But absolutely, I'm happy to work with people who have sensory issues because it's just so easy to integrate their issues or modify the environment to help them.
Emily, do we have time for one more? It's 11. We're out of time. So for those of you who've been writing in, we will take note of them and do them at another time.
Absolutely.
And we so appreciate you writing in, but I thank you so much. This was a fast hour. I learned so much.
And you know, I love that people are interacting with us. I really encourage you to do that. And I also ask that people, we get so many emails, Shannon, as you know, that of people who thank us for the show. And I really love doing this show, and I hope that we can grow it. And we have so many spectacular people here at CARD who would love to do the same thing, and if we can just get higher viewership, we will basically then be able to afford to have this show go on many more hours during the day as well, or other shows. But so we ask you to let other families know, just spread the word about Autism Live as a whole, because if we can start to increase our viewership, then a lot of other good things will come.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you.
Share our site and let people know that you're watching. It's great, and that they have the opportunity to talk to people like Dr. Doreen Graham-Piché. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
All right, we are going to take a break and have you watch The A Word. When we come back, we'll be joined by Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Watch The A Word.
Other people who don't really get it, it's like, it's not a big deal. But it's like, yeah, we've been working on this for like 5 months. And he finally did it on his own. And I think that's the most exciting thing. Star. Can you say star?
Mouse. Dog. Pivot.
Jack Riley.
Talk Riley.
Come here.
Baba, talk Riley.
Yay! Hi. Good boy. Okay, sit down. Thanks. All right. What do you want to play when we're done? Do you want the tractor or you want a puzzle?
Puzzle.
You want a puzzle? Okay. Okay, ready? What is it? Say needs knees. Good boy. What is it? It's knees. Good job. Transitioning, he always has to say bye-bye, and it just makes him so sad. But I know they use it as a transition word for him, but I kind of want to vary it so that it's not bye-bye every time, like it's all done, or we'll play with it later, or something like that. And just kind of guiding him to whatever it is that we're doing. Or giving him words like, you know, can I have like 1 more minute playing with the blocks, or playing with the tractor, just so he knows that he can ask for more time if he wants to. I just kind of want to nip it in the bud if I can. Okay, Jack, 1 more minute. Say okay.
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 Just
seems like there's a lot of emotional involvement, and it's kind of hard not to
It
be
is.
involved because
It
you know
is.
you're affecting
Yeah.
people's lives.
Yeah, every day. Yeah, it is. It is hard, but it's also like rewarding too. Come here.
Where will this?
No, come here.
Papa, look at this.
Yay! Hi, mister. Hi, mister. Give me jumping. Good job. What is it?
Toby.
Jumping. You're so smart. Give me jumping. Nice job. What is it?
Toby.
Jumping. One more sticker. Are you ready?
So when you're teaching a new label, you start off with just
The field of one, so that it's isolated, and he knows that, you know, this is the only thing that we're looking for, so that when we throw them into the ones that he already knows, or even with ones that he doesn't know, we can be able to see if he can discriminate that these pictures are jumping versus the other one. So that's when the true test is, you know, does he know what the picture of jumping looks like. So then after this, I'm going to throw it in the field of unknown pictures to see if he can even discriminate. And after he knows that, then I'll throw it in with the actions that he's already mastered. Give me sleeping. Rock on, good job. What is it?
Sweetie.
Sweet, nice. All right, Jack, let's go outside, okay?
Outside.
All right,
Let's go.
Thanks, buddy. Oh, you're just always so cute.
In part 21, we learned that Jack Riley requests regularly now. Because of this, they are now introducing a new skill that will build from what he has already learned, waiting. First, it will only be for 2 seconds, and once he gets the idea, they will increase the time slowly.
You want an E or a Y?
Wait.
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 No. Wait.
Wait.
No. Wait.
Wait.
Hands
Wait.
Still.
There you go.
Good boy. There's the Y.
Yay, there you go, buddy.
Wait.
E.
Wait. No. Wait. Hands down.
Yay, you did it.
Wait.
Wait.
Good waiting. Good eye contact too, Lovey.
That's really good, Cheryl. This one's so good at that.
Welcome to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Shannon Penrod.
And I'm Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson, and thanks for being here today with us. I was listening to Doreen as I was sitting out in the little waiting area we have, and you know, talking about food therapy. Well, we're going to get actually. Before we go into this, we're going to get into some of our most challenging behaviors that Shannon and I are having with our own children today.
Yeah.
We're going to ask you for your advice, and we're also going to talk about things that are currently working, not working with those challenging behaviors, so we can kind of continue this discussion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
But because we both talked about this and said how important it is, because we're here as autism moms.
That's right.
And, you know, we like to share with you the successes that we have, but also to know that we have challenges at home too, like everybody else.
So many challenges that I can't even, you know, that's an understatement. And,
Yes.
You know, the challenges continue, but it's by sharing that we get great information that can sometimes work for us. So we're going to talk about some of the things we're having going on with my little boy Wyatt and your little boy Jim.
Yes.
And not so little anymore.
I was just going to say, my son would object to the little...
Yeah, our big boys, Wyatt and Jim, in our next segment. We're going to talk about some of the challenging behaviors and situations we have with them. But first, let's get into what some of the things in the news.
Yes, we've got several different things that we want to talk about in the news, and one of them about pivotal response training.
Yeah, which I have never tried. I've not done any of that with Wyatt. We went more the ABA route in terms of behavior therapy. I do know lots of parents that have had success, and there's a new study out of the UC Santa Barbara and Yale, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I, you know, we have done some pivotal response stuff with our ABA.
You have.
That I didn't necessarily know at the time that that's what it was.
Okay.
And it wasn't until somebody was explaining, I went, oh, well, we did this with my child.
Well, do you know a basic definition of it?
No, don't ask me to. Don't ask me to.
Does it have it in the study?
I believe that we can talk a little bit about what it does.
Okay. It focuses on specific skills, right?
Well, it says it forgoes the focus on specific skills like the block building to concentrate on pivotal areas such as motivation in hopes of inducing a cascade effect with a similar impact across multiple areas. So instead
translate.
Okay, so sometimes, because we had Dr. Adele Nadowski in on Friday talking about how sometimes in ABA, we teach the very small amount of the skill, and Dr. Grandpichet was just talking about shaping up a skill. And so, but there are some times where instead of going through all the little steps that will show a skill, kind of put the child in charge of it and give them some big motivation to make a big leap, and maybe I'm, I could be talking up my sleeve, who knows?
Okay, well maybe some parents out there maybe can write in and give us a more accurate, description of it that simplifies it.
Here's
what helps their children.
And in the quote in this article, they're saying, say a child wants to draw and asks for a red crayon while she has her back to me. I say, I can't understand what you're saying if you're not looking at me. Once she orients towards me, we provide a contingent response. In this case, give her the red crayon, and ideally she begins to understand, hey, me looking at you and asking you for what I want gets me what I want. Ultimately, the social interaction becomes the reward on its own, which is the ultimate goal.
That sounds very similar, though, to ABA.
It absolutely is. But sometimes in ABA, though, we take it to that very finite part where first we would teach the red crayon.
Right.
Then we would teach getting somebody's attention. And then, and for some kids, you need to do that. And Dr. Nadowski was just talking about the other day about how kids learn in different ways, and that sometimes with kids you have to do the building blocks, and sometimes with kids you need to do the fundamentals, and some kids move so fast that you just go with expansion skills.
Okay.
And so for me, the pivotal response training is doing those fundamentals and the expansion skills. And for some kids, this is really, really beneficial, and you can move very quickly through some things.
Okay.
And through some skills, I should say, too, because with one individual child, maybe with a specific skill, they could do pivotal response training, but another skill, they have to get the building blocks up to it.
I see. Okay, so this study documented positive brain changes after they received pivotal response training, correct?
Yeah, so they did the MRIs before and took a picture of the brain to see what it looks like. Then they did the pivotal response training and took a picture of the brain and saw that there were changes in the brain.
And not just changes, but marked and remarkable changes in how the children were processing the stimuli. Right?
Yeah.
Now, the Kegel Autism Center at the University of California, Santa Barbara was part of this study, and it seems like Yale University was involved as well.
And really important, I think, we see behavior changes when we go about teaching something in a behavioral way. But now to be able to document, and more studies are wanting to do this with ABA and pivotal response training to show that there is an actual difference, that it makes a difference in the brain. I think it just gives more credence to it, and more people then go, all right, this really makes a difference.
Yeah, because it's scientific black and white when you see the difference in the brain.
Yes.
Okay.
Because we've all heard, although it's been documented time and time again, the difference that happens in children when they get the right therapy at the right time. And yet there are some people who say, it wasn't that. They poo-poo it. But when they get something black and white, like a change in a brain, I think they pay more attention to it.
Okay.
So I think that's our takeaway.
All right, good. And then we have a new study going on in Charleston.
Yes.
In Charleston, West Virginia, by the way, not South Carolina. I just wanted to point that out where this was, because there are two Charlestons.
Because you're a good Southern girl,
and
aren't you?
I am from North Carolina and Virginia. But there is a drug that it's called memantine.
And this is something that they had been using in Alzheimer's, correct?
Yes. And what they're doing is they're doing a clinical trial to see if this medication can lessen the symptoms of autism. So it's not over yet. They're still going strong. And what really was interesting to me about this article was it had a link to a website where parents can sign up for clinical trials. I never knew about that. Did you?
I didn't either. And you brought this to my attention, and I thought it was interesting because from time to time we'll talk about how they're trying. At this point in time, there is no one-size-fits-all drug that has been shown to have an effect on autism. But there's certainly lots of clinical trials that are going on for different drugs and different medical interventions.
Yes, which then, if they are effective, then mainstream medicine and pharmacological, big pharma, I would say. That sounds negative, though, big pharma. The pharmaceutical industry. Big pharma sounds like this monster, which, you know. Sometimes I think they are. Okay, that's a little side comment. But the pharmaceutical industry will then make available to all of us once it has been approved in clinical trials. So I went to this site, and it is www.connectmeprogram.com. Okay, so if you go to www.connectmeprogram.com, you will see they have a map, and they have you can put the map. You can put your cursor on the map and see what studies are being conducted in your area. And then they have a form that you can fill out if you're interested in having your child be in one of these clinical trials. Now, this oftentimes offers an opportunity for parents that would never get the opportunity if they're willing to do this. And these are conducted under highly rigorous scientific standards, that your child might be able to try a cutting-edge technique or therapy that you never know. Could have great effects, could not.
And honestly, I went to the website after you gave me the link, and I went to it and looked around, and there were a bunch of questions that you can ask. And I looked at the frequently asked questions, and it was said, you know, do we have the ability to quit the study if we want to at any time? Yes. Do we get full disclosure? All of that. So I do encourage people to look at it. And I think that we're a pretty good litmus test because I'm the soul of cautiousness. And so it made me go, I can't imagine. And I think that you're a little bit more open to that kind of thing.
I am, because I do believe that, the medical, that mainstream medicine is looking at certain substances now that are not necessarily drugs that do harm. And one, you know, I know oxytocin was in a recent study. Now, oxytocin is a naturally occurring hormone. If oxytocin is deemed to help autism, I would be willing to try that. I would be willing to try that. Now, I also need to admit that my son is on he's on an antifungal, which is a drug that is prescription. And he is also, he's on an antiviral, and he is also on a very small dosage, pediatric dose of an SSRI for his anxiety, which, as you were just talking about with Dr. Doreen. Anxiety is a huge issue for our kids, and probably one of the biggest issues for my son, and I'm sure many of you out there have issues with anxiety. So we made the decision after much consideration and discussion with my husband and myself and prayer and everything else, and talking about it with doctors, that it would enable him to learn better in the classroom, and then we would gradually wean him off of that SSRI.
And you've been really pleased with the results of it.
We have found that it's made life a lot easier in terms of his rigidity, and has made it easier for him to focus at school.
But getting back to my point was that I think it's really individual, it's really personal, but I know that there are some of you out there who would be interested, and so we wanted to get you the information about this website, because you might think to yourself, you know, where do they get, and I will be honest with you, as cautious and slow-moving as I am with things, I think back to when Lovas was doing the Young Autism Project, and there were parents who had no place to go. There was no such thing as ABA, and they were quote-unquote desperate, and showed up and said, yes, we're going to take 2 years and bring our children here and see what happens. And almost half half of those children recovered and lead an amazing life to this day because those parents were willing to say, look, we're willing to try this.
And so that was highly experimental at the time.
It was very experimental at the time, and no one had any idea. I don't even think, I'll have to ask Dr. Doreen sometime if they really felt that they were going to get the result that they did. I really doubt it.
But I want to also mention that the clinical trial in Charleston, West Virginia,
yes,
this, I hope I'm saying it right, the metamine,
yes,
is not going to be able to accept any more children. However, if you go to that site, www.connectmeprogram.com, you will see that there are other clinical trials either currently signing up families and children, or it says to be announced on some of the geographic areas, and there are lots of geographic areas in the country. So for those of you that are interested, it's just more information for you. Check out the site.
Okay, great. And you had also brought to my attention yesterday that there is new information, that scientists have found new evidence as to the cause of potentially why there are more boys on the spectrum than there are girls on the spectrum.
Yes.
This is fascinating.
Yeah, this is very fascinating. A friend just sent this to me yesterday, and you know, I get asked that question all the time. Why more boys?
Yeah,
because when I give the statistics to people, and it says scientists studied thousands of pairs of twins and found evidence that supports the idea that females are protected. What remains to be done is the difficult task of pinpointing the biological reasons that underlie the gender imbalance. Could provide clues that could prevent or treat the disorder. So they found a clear signal that girls are protected. In other words, females needed to have a greater burden of familial risk factors in order to manifest classical autistic behaviors.
Now this is interesting to me because last night here at the Center for Autism they had individuals from Lineagen, because you know they're partnering at the Center for Autism, they're partnering with them to do genetic testing on children and give that information to the families, but then also, you know, compile it to be able to, for a bigger study, to be able to look at progress and with different genetic issues. And one of the benefits of doing the genetic testing is to know what your risk factor is if you have more children, or to be able to tell the family. It's just one of the many benefits of it.
Yes, because let's face it, a lot of families out there that have a child on the spectrum that want another child are terrified.
Yeah.
Because obviously, not that they would not love and cherish this child, but they know the demands of raising a child with autism. And if they have one child there already, they would like to, you know, have all the information necessary to deal with this.
Absolutely. It's a consideration that I think most people are aware of. And to see this and see that there's a potential that and I don't think it doesn't seem to me that they know quite yet how they're protected.
It doesn't really say, you know, it doesn't go into that.
But that girls' risk rates from genetic factors are significantly less.
Are significantly less from genetic factors is really the outcome of the study.
Which is
whereas
very
boys
interesting.
seem to be more susceptible to the genetic factors. Now we know the prevailing wisdom is that autism is an epigenetic disorder, which means genetic factors combined with environmental triggers.
Absolutely.
But this is an interesting study.
And there have been some other studies about this. I didn't have time to look up this morning, but I remember last year there was one about hormones and the cascade effect of hormones in the brain that suggested maybe that might have something to do with how females, because let's face it, we have different hormones and they cascade in a different way. I'm living proof that they cascade in a different way. So, you know, we'll look forward to hearing more information about this.
Okay, good.
But
there's a lot of scientists out there working now.
Thank goodness, because my brain can't handle it. So better minds are working on it. I thank God for that every day.
Yeah,
somebody
all of
else is working on it.
Neurophysicists and scientists out there trying to find the answers. We applaud you.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. All right, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, Nancy and I are going to start to talk with you guys really kind of honestly and frankly about some of the things that go on in our household and the things that we're still working on, and ask for your input on them. So stick with us.
When you find out you're having a boy, you always think like, oh, he's going to play football, he's going to do this and that. And then when he's diagnosed, all those things get washed away.
It's like that piece that's always in the back of your mind, you know, where is he, what is he doing, is he safe?
We really didn't know what we were dealing with. I wish that they could have directed me a little bit more and provided me some information.
I was a young mom. I didn't know what it was like to raise a boy, despite a boy with autism.
Hundreds of thousands of families are not getting the help they need for their children with autism all around the country. ACT Today is determined to bridge the gap. These families really have to go through a lot to get a grant. The application process isn't easy. The records, the diagnosis proof, they're really battling for their kids. So when we can give them a grant, it is so wonderful to see that they succeed in getting that help for their children. Our founder, Dr. Doreen Graham-Pichet, is an amazing woman, and she is one of the world's foremost authority on behavior of children with autism. She's extremely knowledgeable, and she oversees every single grant we give. She is part of that process. People may think of autism care and treatment as simply schooling or therapy, but you know, we provide important safety supports, things like fencing, for example. The whole family's living in fear of that child running out into traffic. I recently delivered an iPad to a little boy with some of the apps that are out there for children with autism. Miracles happen.
I got the iPad from ACT.
From ACT?
What did it say? Can you repeat that, Dustin?
I got the iPad from ACT.
We have helped so many military families, and when I think of these brave families that are fighting two battles, one to protect our country and one for the right treatment and care for their children, it breaks my heart, and I think we have to do more as a nation to help them.
There's not a day that doesn't go by that we don't think about it. Some people say, oh, he's normal. You don't see the battles that I see every single day. My husband does have to deploy, and when they get on that bus, that might be the last time that my kids ever see them.
So I called, and they informed me that he had received a grant, which was like a blessing from above. I was just like speechless. I just started to cry because, you know, without it, we would have been lost.
The ACT grant was a total miracle, and without that, we wouldn't be able to receive the service dog. So we're so appreciative what they've done for us as a family.
Recently, ACT Today funded a program for military children with autism in San Diego, the Inclusion Films program, which is run by Joey Travolta, and teaches kids on the autism spectrum literal filmmaking skills. They learn how to make a movie.
Are we ready? There you go, got it. Okay. Everything that goes into the process of making a film goes into everyday life. So they're learning life skills, they're learning to collaborate.
It was really nice to know how much they were enjoying this camp, and they're with people who are supporting them and are making them feel great about themselves and their differences and their similarities. And I get two kids that are working together and apart and together and apart, so it's an interrelationship as well as a camp and a learning experience.
It's so fulfilling when I get letters. One stands out for me, a boy who was 14 with Asperger's, and we gave him a grant to go to a drama camp. He wrote to us and said, "Dear ACT Today, thank you for letting me belong for the first time in my life." These kids are remarkable. You know, we underestimate them. They're so knowledgeable, they're so capable, and we can change the life of a family, which means changing the life of a community. Welcome back to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. And Shannon and I want to do something a little different in this segment. We are going to ask you for some of your advice for our children, things that have worked for you, and share sort of where we are on our journey as autism moms. So I'm going to start first talking about my son Wyatt. Wyatt is now 11 years old. Now, let me tell you, one thing you never think is going to happen is that your child is going to grow up. Well, they do, let me tell you. And it happens so fast.
Yes.
It is like, zoop, and you wake up and you say, how did that happen, right? Just like when we grow older.
Yeah.
You know, I always find myself walking by the mirror and going, when did I become my mother? So and I'm looking at my son, and I'm seeing so much progress, and I'm so grateful for that progress. But at the same time, the challenges continue. They're just different challenges. So I want to go back a little bit on his history, Shannon. I think you know most of it, but my son was diagnosed somewhere around 3.5 after being basically, well, my calls to the pediatrician were really kind of put aside. I think he was trying to assure me nothing was wrong. From the time Wyatt was 2 until his 3rd birthday, I made many calls and said, you know, I'm worried about him not talking. He advised me to go see a speech therapist. Wyatt was in speech therapy 3 afternoons a week between 2 and 3. The speech therapist never said autism. Nobody ever brought that word up. Finally, when my dear next-door neighbor suggested he might have autism, I was furious, of course, and in denial, like so many mothers are. And when I took him into the pediatrician for his year 3 checkup, the result of that was the pediatrician telling me he's at least a year delayed and giving me the name of a early intervention center that did more intensive testing. I went to that particular center, I won't say the name, and we did one test. And the person who initiated the test said, well, he may have autism. And I said, can you give me some of the markers for that? And they said, well, we would rather do more extensive testing. And then they wanted to do another test that I think was going to be about $1,800 for this full assessment. Well, I didn't know the ropes at the time. Plus, I didn't really have a lot of recommendations or know where I was coming from. So I decided not to go with them. I went back to the speech therapist who recommended the school district do the testing.
Oh.
So the school district psychologist entered the picture, and she proceeded to do some testing, which of course consisted of the parent evaluation, where you have to answer questions, which I definitely gave him higher marks than he deserved in every area. I think at that time I was still protecting, you know, the denial thing was still going on, and I wanted everything to look perfect because I wanted everything to be perfect. So when she came to visit, I made sure that he did really well, and, you know, I really didn't know the ropes of what you need to do. So they diagnosed him with PDD-NOS, Pervasive Developmental Disorder Nonspecific. And he was placed in a school that had children on the autism spectrum and a few children with other developmental delays, with typically developing children. At the beginning, it seemed wonderful. The teacher was really a great lady, very well versed in behavior therapy. She then had an accident, broke her leg, and was taken out, and they had some substitutes in that school. And this was a class of like 25 children. So with only 1 teacher and 2 aides, it clearly did not have the ratio that he needed. So meanwhile, he's getting older and older, and somewhere around his fourth year, I read about what was called Defeat Autism Now conference, and went to one in Long Beach, and that's when everything changed in my world. I heard Dr. Doreen Graham-Pichet talk about ABA therapy, and can you believe that here I had a child with probably moderate, at least moderate, if not more towards the severe side, because at this point his tantrums were, you know, 5, 6, 7 a day, half hour each. His language was pretty much disappearing. And I was just in a panic. So when I heard Dr. Graham-Pichet speak about this therapy that is recovering children, first I was hopeful, then I was a little angry. How can I be in this situation after, you know, here we are where he's almost 5, and I've missed what, you know, I felt like I'd missed the boat, Shannon. I mean, I don't know how many other parents out there get scared of missing the boat.
Oh, they write to us every day and say,
is it too late?
Yeah, did I blow this?
Did I blow this? I think I blew this. Well, First of all, I just want to say to all your parents out there, you didn't blow it.
Yeah.
You did the best you could with the information you had. I've forgiven myself for that. I've gone through a lot of mourning about that because I felt I should have known better as a former television producer and born researcher. I should have known better. But the people that I depended upon to give me the information were not educated at the time. And you know, this, Shannon, is back. Wyatt was born in 2001, so we're talking 2003, 4, 5. And so much has happened since then.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
I just want to point out, though, that it wasn't that you were sitting there and doing nothing.
I was doing everything every day.
You were doing everything you could.
Everything
it just
I could.
It wasn't stuff that was getting you a great result, first of all, and it wasn't stuff that was scientifically proven to be effective, and you just got bad information.
Yes.
And if you're sitting there at home and thinking, well, I'm doing a lot, it's very likely that you are.
Yeah.
But is it effective? I think that's the question we have to keep asking ourselves.
You have to just keep going and say, it is what it is.
Is this,
okay?
But is this working?
Right.
Yes.
So then I started pursuing getting Wyatt into an intensive ABA program, which we succeeded. It took a while. We were on a waiting list. And we did start doing some rather aggressive biomedical techniques, including the GFCF diet and vitamin therapy, and we did chelation therapy and several other IVIG, into gamma globulin infusions. So we started seeing, it was 2 steps forward, 1 step back. There were some regressions. There was a lot of forward movement, then regressions. The ABA, he had after school. I still had a lot of confidence in the public school system. So we were.
I feel like I want to give you a hug over that.
We were moving along.
And sometimes that's appropriate, but
right. So then I realized that some behaviors were coming up when he was around in 2nd grade. The progress was going up, 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 and then all of a sudden some really disturbing behaviors began happening. And after a pretty thorough investigation of what he was getting at his school, I realized that he was being put in the special resource class and not being given the one-on-one attention. And not only that, around some other children that had some very disturbing behaviors. So at that point, we took him out of public school and we hired our own aide, had them trained in ABA, and that lasted for 2 years. And now Wyatt has an ABA program that is funded by our insurance. We are one of those lucky families that finally, when he was in the 5th grade, got funding for ABA through insurance.
Yeah.
So that's sort of bringing you up to where we are now. Wyatt is in a school that has very few children with autism. As a matter of fact, it's a private religious academy, and it not cost prohibitive, and it's a wonderful school in that they recognize that autism is an epidemic. They recognize the need for these children to be around their typically developing peers, and they accept 1 child with an autism diagnosis per grade because it's a very small school.
Interesting.
So he goes to school every day with an aide, an ABA aide, and in the afternoon we have several hours, couple of times a week, for home training, so for adaptive skills.
Okay.
One of the biggest problems or biggest challenges, reframe that we're having with, we reframe everything positive, okay? We're thinking positive. Self-stimulatory behavior has been a big issue for my son, and we definitely have linked it to his anxiety, but Wyatt would rather play with water all day long than just about any behavior or any activity. He loves to go out by the swimming pool and splash the water and splash all the way around the pool. He loves to go to the kitchen sink and play with bubbles. He loves to play with bubbles in the bathtub. He's a prolific little artist. He's discovered watercolors will let him play with the water. So that's a functional way to do it.
Absolutely.
So what we're trying to do is limit the self-stimulatory behavior, give him a timer on it, use it in some cases as a reward as we shorten the time he gets to do it. So if he gets home from school and he's particularly anxious then, before maybe going into more therapy or an activity, we'll let him play with the water for 10 minutes.
Right.
And then we then are now scaling that back to then 5 minutes. And pretty soon it'll be nothing at all. and we will replace it with other preferred activities. However, that desire to do the self-stimulatory behavior seems to always be present.
Yeah.
So that's a big one for us. And I'm wondering if any families out there might want to write us, you don't have to do it right now, but write us on other self-stimulatory behaviors perhaps your child has.
Right.
Or narrow, restricted areas of interest that have become, it's a problem when it gets in the way of normal functioning, as we know, when it keeps a child from developing in other areas and gaining skills they need in other areas. So that's a big one for me.
And has Wyatt talked about what he wants to do when he grows up? Does he know what he wants to be yet?
He has tried on a lot of things. When I asked him, do you want to grow up to be an artist? He says, I already am an artist.
Well, thank you very much.
So that one, he seems to know what he's got. He'll change things. Sometimes he'll say he wants to be a helicopter pilot. Sometimes he'll say he wants to be a teacher. Sometimes he'll say he wants to write and draw stories. So I'll say, well, maybe you could be an author, because he's already written one children's book.
There you go.
He doesn't really have that, completely down yet at age 11.
Because last summer, Jem took one of his summer camps that was a week-long thing. It was a marine biology camp.
Okay.
And he got really into all of that. And it was our 10th anniversary last summer, and we went to Vegas, went to Vegas for a couple of days. And we went to the Siegfried and Roy, the tiger and dolphin thing in the Mirage Hotel.
Yes.
And we could have spent all day there because he was so into the dolphins, and the dolphins come up and the trainers work with them. And there is a thing, I don't remember how much the girl said it was, but there is a thing where they can go and be the marine biologist for the day and swim with the dolphins, and they teach them how to train the dolphins. And there were a bunch of people who were there that were doing that. And I asked one of the people who was there, I said, how much did this cost you? And I think my brain shorted out when she told me.
Yeah, the answer on that one.
Yeah, because I don't remember. And I kind of had a reaction. She said, but this is so worth it. I've wanted to do this my whole life. And she said, if I had done this sooner, I think I probably would have done this for a living. And I thought about it, and I thought, well, honestly...
Because my son does love animals.
And she said, and one of the other trainers said, I spend my whole day her exact quote unquote, I spend the whole day in the tank splashing around with the dolphins.
Hey, it could be the perfect job for my son.
I don't know.
Hey, it sounds like a good idea. It sounds like a good idea. So, that could be something. But I'm just wondering, if any of you out there have this self-stimulatory for now, what are some of the things that have worked for you to stop behaviors? Because I know there's so many behaviors out there that our kids engage in that tend to take all of their focus and attention.
Absolutely.
So, and I'm open to, any type of behavior therapy that has worked for you, diet, biomedical treatments, anything that you find. I'd love to hear it, what's being successful for you.
I think that's great.
The other thing that's happening right now is his relationship to his therapist and his school aide, and he does have the desire to do it on his own. Almost every day now he says, Mommy, I don't need a school aide anymore. I can do it on my own. Yet he can't yet.
Okay.
He does need that refocusing. He does need that one-on-one at this point. So it's trying to dangle the carrot in one way of saying, one day you will be able to do it on your own, but you need some help now, and when to fade that out. Now, of course, I'm sure we are with CARD, and I'm sure that they will at some point tell us about that fade-out plan. But did you find with Jim that he was conscious of...
Oh, yeah. When we started to know that we were getting towards the end was when he was saying, I don't need this anymore.
Okay.
And I can remember Sienna Greener-Wooten being with Jem for a moment, and Jem saying, I don't need therapy anymore. And she said, well, Jem, you know what? I know that's how you feel. That's not the truth. But here are the 5 things that you have to demonstrate on a regular basis that you can do. And as soon as you can do these things on a regular basis, therapy will stop that day. And he went, wait a second, let me get a pen. My child who doesn't like to write was like, let me get a pen. What are the 5 things?
Look at that.
And I remember going, my God, why have I not thought to say this before?
So that might be something that I ask Wyatt to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
do you
he
remember
did.
those 5 things that you were given?
He had to answer, I can remember some of them. He had to answer when he was spoken to. He had to stick up for himself. He had to, there were like, I can't remember what the specific things were, but they were things that he had to show that he could do them without being prompted.
Without being prompted.
And she said, when you can do that, Jem, you know, we close up shop here and you are done.
Okay.
And it became the sort of mantra for the next 6 months, and that's when they started to fade everything. But he would do something or not do something, and I would say, you know, isn't that on your list of things that you need to? And there was actually, I'll have to dig it out, there was a big laminated thing on the wall that if he did these things on a given day, he got a sticker. So sort of shaping it up, he got a sticker. And if he did them 2 days in a row, on the 3rd day, the therapist would come and they would just go and do whatever he wanted to do, and they didn't have to do therapy. So that was... so I hear that, Nancy, and I got to tell you, that's really encouraging. If Wyatt is saying, I don't need this anymore,
he's aware of it. I can do it on my own.
Right.
So that's really good.
But then then that becomes the desire. If that's what he really wants,
then how do you get there?
Well, and then you say to him, well, then you have to show me that you can do it on your own.
Well, I'm going to talk to that about that with his therapy team.
Yeah.
I think that's a great suggestion.
Yeah, and it was Sienna who said it to him.
Okay. I want to bring up 2 more things.
Yes.
One is, and I'm sure some of you parents out here can really relate to this one. My husband and I often find ourselves at odds with one another on the program. And let me tell you what I've realized it's come down to.
Yeah.
I am not, I guess, the best boundary setter and sticking to that boundary.
Yeah.
I am not the best with following through, because mom's instinct is showing the love, right?
Right.
And not towing that line. My husband needs help in the patience arena.
Oh.
So while he can toe the line, he gets very impatient, I feel, and judgmental, even while he's towing the line.
Yeah.
So sometimes that gets us at odds with one another, and I'll go, okay, you deal with this one. Do you ever do that?
Oh, we do tag team all the time.
Yeah.
It's like,
I'm not getting involved here.
You're up.
You take this one, or I take. Are you going to let me handle this, or are you going to handle this? So I know the answer is that it's so important that we're all on the same team.
Yeah.
It's so important that we're following through on the same protocol, the same instructions, and that we don't let it get us into an argument with our spouses and cause strain there.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to be in that percentile of couples.
But it's hard.
It is hard.
It's hard. I think it's the thing we all need to strive for, but I'm going to go further than say it's hard. It's impossible. How are we ever going to be completely on the same page, and how are we ever going to have the same strengths and weaknesses? I think, we're, as my husband likes to say, I'll use a nicer word, he uses a different word, but we're in a poop storm a lot of the time. And you need to hold on to somebody in the poop storm. And I think that's the most important thing. And the fact that you guys tag team, and that you know that like, I'm sitting here listening to you, I'm going, gosh, I know that sometimes we do this, but I haven't really stopped to think about, well, what's the area that I'm stronger in, the area that he's stronger. And the fact that you can identify that, and that you tag each other out.
And that we can gently remind, now remember to be patient, and hold your ground.
Right.
I think that's probably, I'm coming to sort of some of my own answers as I'm verbalizing this. And this might be something good for you to do with a friend.
Yeah. Talk it out.
Or your partner, your spouse. Talk about where you are if you feel kind of stuck with your child with some of the behaviors.
And admit that it's hard.
Yeah. It is hard.
And that some days it's just freaking impossible.
Right. And you're going to do the best you can that day, and tomorrow's a new day.
And the fact that you guys are still married, we know what the statistics are when they talk about them. We always laugh about that someday we're going to come home and there'll be a divorce decree on our door. That they'll just go, well, we assumed by now. With everything else you've had to deal with, we just assume that it's there. And we'll go, oh, well, this means we can have another wedding. Because there are a lot of you out there who it got to the point where you couldn't do it anymore, and you guys are still plugging along.
We're still plugging along.
And you've had other things besides autism
We have.
to deal
We've had
with.
cancer, recent deaths of my parents, and various other things, which have been very, very trying, to say the least.
Yeah, no kidding.
So the other area is that I feel a friend of mine said the other day that she feels that she doesn't really fit in anymore. When her son was more clearly on the spectrum, moderately autistic, it was so obvious. She was in the crisis. It did give her an identity. Then you've got the recovered moms who got everything, did everything right, or
and got lucky.
And
did
got
everything
lucky.
right and got lucky.
And
Let's
got
be
lucky.
honest.
The timing worked for them.
Right.
God bless them and those children.
Right.
But then there are a lot of us that you and I called a couple of weeks ago on the show sort of the tweens, and not tweens in age, but the between recovered and between clearly on the spectrum.
Right.
My son will be able to go places now almost pass, you know, and many times pass is typical, but then he'll do something. I'm going to give an example of being at Starbucks the other day. So we're at Starbucks, we go over the rules before we go in, what he gets to order, you know, soy, vanilla, how he does it, how he pays, and stay with me, hands to yourself, all those things.
Right.
You got it? I got it. So we go in, and then he did all those things, but then after we got our drinks, he goes over to a big sofa, puts his drink down, and starts kind of jumping on it for sensory. Then, as I'm going over to get my drink, I see him run over to the where they keep the sugar and all those things, and put the sugar jar in his mouth.
Dear. Yeah.
So I take him back over and sit him down, and I feel this conscious effort to let everybody know my child's special, because I don't want them to think he's a brat.
Right.
So I sit him down and I say, look at my eyes. What do we talk about, you know, eating, going over and touching things like that? And he goes, those aren't the rules. He goes, I don't touch things like that. And I said, okay, well, we need to remember that next time.
Right.
So, you know, sometimes I feel like, okay, I'm kind of cruising along here. He's doing really great. And then that one little behavior will come up.
Yes.
So, and to remind you, you know, you're not on the home plate yet, lady.
Yeah.
And you may not be.
Yeah, ever.
And you may not be ever.
Yeah.
So that's another
Which is
interesting thing that's
humbling.
going on. It's humbling.
It
It's
is humbling.
So those
And
are kind
scary.
of where, those are the things where I'm at right now. If anybody has comments on their own children, if anybody, please write to us and let me know, and share some of your great wisdom, because it's through sharing that we really learn how to help ourselves. So when we come back, we're going to talk
take
a
a
little bit
short
about
break
Jem.
and come back and talk about Jem.
Okay,
so
good.
stick with us.
Okay.
Monica Holloway is a critically acclaimed author, speaker, and activist. She is also an autism mom. Her son Wills was diagnosed with autism at the age of 3. Now, at the age of 15, Wills is a high school freshman, attending a mainstream school.
I'm in a brand new school. I'm in a great school that I love, and I'm really happy there. I made friends pretty quickly on the first day, and something interesting happened to me on the first day.
Tell me.
We were doing an art project with fabric markers, and there was a little label on it that said, squeeze for best results.
Okay.
And so I squeezed it and it exploded all over the people at my table.
Oh no!
And we were all covered in little blue dots.
I asked Wills how he describes autism to people.
I say that I have Asperger's syndrome, which is a slight form of autism. It doesn't make you any different. It really doesn't. It's just there, and it just kind of makes you who you are.
I asked Wills what he thought of the Sandy Hook shooter's actions being linked to autism.
Please, just don't be scared of autism. If somebody has autism, don't be scared of them. Chances are they're not violent. They're just like you or me.
Monica is a proud mom with good cause. I asked her to describe Wills in 5 words.
Generous, curious, funny, sensitive, loving.
We had a chance to talk about the Sandy Hook massacre and how Monica heard the news.
On Friday, when the shooting happened in Connecticut, I was in my car, and my husband Michael called to tell me what had happened. And I was in a state of shock, as I think we all were, but that many children. And I felt, I guess a mind can't take in that kind of information without feeling nauseous. I felt it go from here all the way down my body. I started calling everybody I knew to tell them I loved them, and I was thinking about them, and I just wanted to be with the people that I knew. I started hearing more and more information come on the news about this shooter having Asperger's or being autistic. And then I started hearing things about, well, does autism cause violence? And I was in a whole other level of shock. Never in a million years would I think that somebody might associate us and my son's face with the face of violence just because he has Asperger's. And I've seen bad days and good days, and that's what kills me, is like there was not a day bad enough to ever make me think that he or any of his friends could ever be violent. The only thing that made me even feel a little bit better, to do something to help educate. And so we've started a campaign on my Facebook page, Cowboy and Wills. It's called I Am the Face of Autism. And please post a picture of yourself. It can be your child, your friend with autism. Let's put these beautiful faces of these people with autism on to wipe out the face of this murderer. Let's put our faces in front of his.
I like seeing Monica Holloway and Wills. That's great.
And she's going to be coming in on Monday. She's going to start doing a semi-regular bit with us on Mondays in the morning. So she'll be with us on Monday. And I was mentioning that her husband is nominated for an Academy Award. So I'm also going to ask her on Monday what it's like to go to the Academy Awards.
Oh, that's going to be fun.
So,
wait a minute, that's going to be right after the Academy Awards.
Yes, the day after. So we'll try to get some insight from her.
Get some dirt on all the outfits.
We want to hear the dish.
Yeah.
But we're going to talk about my son, but first we want to talk about this contest.
Yes. All we need you to do for this contest is to vote. So this is easy. You don't have to give money. This is for ACT Today, Autism Care and Treatment Today. And you've heard us talk enough about what we do as an organization. We give care and treatment today to the many families that cannot access or afford it. And you know, that's most of us out there, most people out there. Yeah. So the information, the project title is And Action, Providing Adolescents with Autism a Filmmaking Experience. So we entered this project called Give for Youth Challenge. Now we only need your vote. Only the top 20 projects with the most votes will get the chance to have their projects funded and matched by Microsoft, up to $100,000 across all the organizations, okay? So 20 projects, we want ours to be one of them. The website Emily has up right now, Vote for ACT Today. You go for that website, which is Give for Youth Maker Good is Project's Autism Film Program. You have it up there on your screen, so it's a hard one to remember.
We'll also put it on our Facebook.
Yeah, okay.
And I think it's probably on
if you
Facebook
go
too.
to that, let me tell you what this is going to fund, and we desperately need this because we did this program last year and we've shown it here on Autism Live. It was a huge success. The ACT Today's film program is a 2-week film program led by Inclusion Films, that's Joey Travolta, in which 38 to 50 participants with autism and up to 12 siblings, they make a 35-minute film. And participants are introduced to so many different trades: animation, wardrobe, set design, script writing, budgeting, acting, prop set, makeup. And so many kids have gone on from this program to be hired by production companies.
It's really amazing.
Film companies, and they leave with a film credit, their resume, and then we, last year we were at the a red carpet event at the San Diego Film Festival, and that helped to shatter a lot of misconceptions about kids and families with autism spectrum disorder. So visit our project page at that address that Emily has up for you there, and click Vote for this idea to vote for us. So you log in with your Good account. If you don't have one, all you need is an email address or a Facebook account to register. You'll be emailed a link that you need to click to verify your address. Once you've voted, you'll see a notification at the top of the screen verifying your vote has been counted. That's such an easy way. I'm going to ask you to do it all of you to do it and to share it on any of your social media. If you tweet, if you Facebook, if you, what else is there, Shannon? Twitter, Facebook.
Those are the important ones. I just, while you were talking, posted it on our Facebook.
Yeah.
And so you can share it. I didn't put a whole lot of information. I just said vote for ACT today, and I put the site, and there's a connected to it. So
and I think we're short on time, but you were going to talk about Jem.
I was going to talk about Jem very shortly, and you guys know that he's 9.5. I talk about him so much on the show. And while I'm doing it, Emily's going to at some point start to cycle through, because we're here at the end of the show. But the biggest things that we deal with, we still struggle language-wise. And it's he does take methyl B12, and that helps him. I don't think we found the right cocktail, but it is as though he speaks language as somebody who learned languages, English as a second language. So there are times where that's a struggle, and the biggest thing for him right now is social. That things have changed with the kids that he hangs out with, and he is frustrated and sometimes will become despondent about the fact that he sees that he doesn't get it. He's that far along that he can see. He tries something and it doesn't work, and he will say to me, I just don't know what to do to get them to play with me. And it really becomes a thing for me as a parent that I really have to step up my game. I've said recently I got to get him into a social skills
group.
I have to do it.
Well, that's
logistically
an
a nightmare for me.
For that.
Not logistically in terms of when the class is and when my life is, but I'm going to have to rearrange.
I just wanted to share. This is my empowerment prayer. Now, you guys can write, I've got my 10 steps to empowerment and the empowerment prayer that I keep in my wallet. So I want to share it, and that is what I try to remember every day and look at every day. God, grant me the wisdom to see disability as an opportunity, the courage to love my child unconditionally, and the faith to live a life of purpose. I think if we remember those things, we take one day at a time, progress will come.
Absolutely, and I just want to say how lovely it is, and I feel like I undercut. I'll share another time about my child more, but how lovely it is when we're honest about it and say this is kicking my can.
And
really
it's
appreciate it, and it's okay to be there and to hold on to each other and get through it together. We'll be back tomorrow. Until then, please give your kiddos a hug from me,
and make it a great day.
Bye bye for now.